preview was accurate. There are no frills. But importantly for a government in poll trouble, there don't seem to be any spills either. The Treasurer's big selling point is the big picture. The budget deficit will disappear in 3 years, 3 years ahead of previous forecasts. The peak deficit comes this financial year. When it wraps up at the end of next month, the deficit will be around $57 billion, or almost 4.5% of the total economy. But after that, the decline is rapid. A deficit of $40 billion next financial year, $13 billion in 2011-12, and a small surplus in the following year. In that climate, budget goodies are in short supply. The most voter-friendly of them are tax changes. People with savings in banks, short-term deposits, annuities, bonds and debentures will get a 50% tax discount on interest earned up to a total of $1,000 starting in a year. Treasury says this will help up to 5.7 million depositors. And the expected simplifying of tax returns is coming through. In 2 years' time, taxpayers will be able to choose a standard $500 deduction, rising to $1,000 a year later, to cover work-related expenses, rather than adding up their costs for a tax agent. There's yet more money for health. The budget's $2.2 billion extra takes the recent splurge on health to more than $7 billion. The budget delivers $350 million over the next 4 years for 23 new GP super clinics and upgrades to 425 existing clinics. There's over $400 million to build up after-hours health services and more than $520 million to train nurses for the GP super clinics. All this being paid for by the $5 billion tax hike on cigarettes. But there's also a couple of other fairly substantial health savings. $1.3 billion will flow from the government renegotiating its deals with drug companies so that when prices for medicines fall, so does the government's contribution. And the tax deduction for medical expenses will be harder to claim, with the spending threshold rising from $1,500 a year to $2,000. That saves the government $350 million. The emissions trading scheme is further off into the never-never. Now the government says it will only revive it if there's sufficient international action after 2012. But that saves the government $650 million over 5 years. All of that is being put into a renewable energy future fund to be spent on wind, solar and biomass projects. The economic outlook is all on the up and up. Growth is forecast to accelerate to 3.25% next financial year and gallop along at 4% in the following year. Treasury says unemployment will come down to 5% next year and 4.75% in 2011-12. So this is not a typical election year budget. But a Labor government running on a fiscal discipline platform isn't typical either. Russell Barton in the Budget Lockup for ABC News.